Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. For those tuning in on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on X, we're glad you all could be with us. We now also are streaming on Instagram as well. We're about to connect with our friends over on Amazon so we can get this party started today. And we welcome our audience tuning in on Amazon Live for Cyrus Webb Presents. I am Cyrus Webb. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon platform, welcome. Glad you all could be with us. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button. You see it either here in this corner or down below. You also will see some of the books by our next guest. We're excited to welcome
Hey,
back Dr. Velma Bagby to our broadcast today. She's the best-selling author of the Cat series. We have the first book in the series right here. The newest book in the series is here. That is the 30-Day Wow Journal. We're going to talk to Dr. Velma not only about what it's been like for her to share the Cat series with the world, but also this month that is all about love and self-love. We're going to talk about what's been like for her to have some important conversations as well. If you guys are not following Dr. Velma, we'll let you guys know how to be able to find her. But Dr. Velma, welcome back to the broadcast.
thank you, Cyrus. It's a pleasure to join you again. I
Look,
always have fun.
well, look, I do too. I do too. And there's always something for us to talk about. And you've been very busy, Dr. Velma. I did not mention it, but Dr. Velma is also a media personality as well. She's the host of two of her own solo podcasts, including her second show, which is Finding Your Voice. She's also a co-host here on Amazon of Word That Choose to Live By that you guys can find on Mondays. Dr. Velma, you have a pretty full plate when it comes to what you're doing with media and books. What has it been like for you to see how your audience has responded to your work?
It's really exciting. It's also comforting and assuring to know that I'm actually doing what my audience loves for me to do, and I'm excited about it. Even some of the folks that say, "Hey, can you change your time to more in the evening? I work on such and such a day." So I said, you always have the replay, so
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
Good deal. And there's so many things. It's interesting. I was thinking when I was prepping for today's segment, part of Dr. Velma's part of the CMG family, so she's with me every month to talk about different projects, but there's always something for us to talk about. Now, your
Mhm.
newest book is the 30-Day Wow Journal, Dr. Velma, but I've been really enjoying Finding Your Voice. I love the fact, I want to say, to see you stretch yourself. We've gotten to see you as a solo host with your first show, Dr. Velma Talks. But now, of course, be to see you interviewing guests. I love seeing you in that element. What has
Mhm.
that been like for you to also to be able now to gain that title of not only being a talk show host, but also being able to see the guests you've been able to speak with?
Well, I basically just took the things that I thought I was going to bury after retirement because this is who I was as a deputy administrator, is what I did. I
Yeah.
was always interviewing employers and potential customers that we had to provide services to. So that was my lane. But I thought all of those things were going to be buried in a box that said retired.
Hmm. Love
But thanks to my publicist who had a finger in my back and said, I'm going to suggest that you bring this back to life. And it really was the right thing to do because I remember those moments I wished I had a person on the podcast who would help to guide me. And because recently I had an audience member that's a member of my family who listened to, I think it was Earl Hall's interview.
it.
She
Mhm.
said, he was talking to me. And when
Wow.
she said those words, that's exactly what I hope will occur, that the
Yeah.
audience will hear something that resonates to them personally and will
Yeah.
help them. So she was in business, and something Earl Hall said, she said he was talking to me.
Yeah, I love that. And that is a great feeling, isn't it, Dr.
Hmm.
Velma? And I think a lot of this has to do with being able to follow what is your purpose and your God-given
Absolutely.
abilities. Hello to you, Tina. Tina is also part of the CMG family. She's joining
Hi,
us.
Tina.
Says hello. And I want to talk about that for a minute because I think there are people who need to hear this, Dr. Velma.
Yeah,
We're in, it's hard to believe, we're in the second month of 2025 already.
yeah.
And there are people, I have talked to people personally. This is not something I've heard, who's like, you know what? This is not the year I wanted. And I keep saying to them, it's only February. You still have time.
Wow.
What has that been like for you, Dr. Velma, to realize? We talked about that recently on Word That You to Live By, about the importance of making the most of today. How have you benefited from not worrying about what you didn't do yesterday, but focusing on what you can do today?
I mean, who can go back to yesterday? Not none of us have that ability, as far as I know,
Right.
have that ability to go back and fix anything from the past. All you have is what you have in this moment. So
Mhm.
you learn from what didn't happen and move forward with what you know you can do today.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to waste that kind of time. So I say, first of all, if we could control everything, maybe we could fix it. But we're not in control of any of it, any of it. And it could be that whatever you missed doing yesterday wasn't supposed to be done at all. So you
Yeah.
got to remember that if God is leading you, then He's leading you correctly. And so
Yeah.
whatever got missed was supposed to be missed. And
Yeah.
so that puts your attention on something else. Maybe it's a new direction you're supposed to go in. But you have to pay attention to those moments because sometimes they're designed to move you in a different path.
Yeah, such a great point, and such a great reminder for all of us. So talking about a different path, I want to
Hmm.
talk about the Catch series because
Yeah.
we kind of have interesting bookends here, Dr. Vilma. And I thought about it as you were just talking because we have a novel here that started this all off, To Catch No One Once, and the newest book is nonfiction with your contributors. Talk to us about what is it that led you to create the characters of Veronica and Grayson and how this series started.
Well, when I began in the Christian contemporary fiction genre, that was new for me. I had to do the research to see where would the type of book that I felt like I needed to write, where would it fit? And it just so happened to be the Christian contemporary fiction. As I moved into that space, I realized there were uh, opportunities to add to the series, but with a nonfiction approach. And I had to figure out how can I do this. So I did the research to determine can you have a mixture in a series, both fiction and nonfiction, and who knows, it could be other things that you can add. And as I did the research, it said absolutely yes. And that gave me the freedom to expound upon some of the things that the main character Grayson talks about in the series. So I figured that some people may want to know, is that true? Is that real? And so the Book of Fools came to be, just including the scriptures because you can't add scriptures in fiction. And so I wanted to put it in a place for those who may want that and would like to know, is it true? And same thing with the affirmations. Grayson, the main character, talks about affirmations and the importance of a woman embracing her worth. So, what better way to present that would be to take 30 women to provide you their favorite scripture that motivates them? And so that's where the affirmation book came from. So, I think it's important to see that it was new to me. I didn't know you could do that, but I'm excited. But there's more books to come to this series. And so I have to basically determine how does this series end? How does it conclude? And I have two books on the way that's going to do that.
Love that. Love that. Hello to you, Robert. Robert Ham is joining us on Facebook. He says, hello, family. Glad to be able to see you, Robert. Congratulations on your show as well.
Hey, Robert.
Conversations, Under the Hood. And so, to that point, then, as I mentioned, Grayson and Veronica, and some people, I tell Dr. Vilma, with every show, just like when people tell me, I didn't know you wrote a book, even though I show my book every day, 7 days a week. Some new person comes up and says, Cyrus, I didn't know you wrote a book. I'm like, yeah, I wrote a book.
Yeah,
but so
several.
yeah, so you are still finding people who are just discovering Grace and Veronica. We really haven't talked about their interactions in a while, so I thought this would be a
Yeah,
great time for us to do that, to
yeah,
kind of go back to where it started. Because the
absolutely.
reason being, as I mentioned, in this month people are looking at love and they're looking about relationships. These are all things you've been able to tackle and the right way to go about it, and that's
Hmm.
where Veronica needed some guidance. What was that like for you through her father, Grayson, Dr. Velma, to kind of remind us in the quote unquote real world the importance of making sure our priorities in the right place, but also that our values in the right place?
Not only that, that you're not in this process alone. And that's one of the biggest mistakes many people make today. They go through the process alone. It was never designed for you to discover your mate by yourself. You had a group of people. Some in the old days when you had the family dynamics, you had a father, you had a mother, you had a grandma, a grandfather. There were dynamics involved with you are making these choices. And so I think it's pretty sad that we went through a period of time where people, the mentality was, I'm grown. No one can tell me what to do. Well, that was the worst thing anybody could say to themselves, because therein lies the problem. You shut down wisdom, you shut down the ability of people to speak and give you guidance, all of that. And so mistakes were made over and over and over. And I just think that me having Grayson as a character who's modeled after my husband, having Veronica and the dynamics, I took the dynamics my husband had with his daughters to engage with the two characters, so that the two characters would come across as real, and their relationship as real. He represented the type of father that we saw in many of our homes. My own dad, he had some critical things to say when I introduced him to my husband. At the time, we were just dating in 10th grade. He wasn't on my list to become my husband, but it just so happens we met in the 10th grade. And I said, Dad, there's my boyfriend. And my dad began to give me these questions like, well, who is he? What does he do? Who's his parents? What's his plan after graduation? What's his career goal? I'm going, Dad, I'm not trying to marry the dude, but that's what a father should do. And so,
Right.
with all of that missing, I just wanted to present that example again so people can see what a father, well, the type of father that I wanted to talk about, to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I love what Tina says, and as someone who's never, I'm old fashioned myself. Here in the South, I'm not into the dating sites and stuff. But Tina says before dating sites, someone knew the one we wanted to date, and the guy went to ask the dad. You're right. I mean, and that
Yeah,
is, a lot of us, as I've said before, I'm turning 50 this year. That seems the way it is. That's the traditional way. But we do live in a world that is so interesting today, where priorities are not put
yeah,
on,
it's
for
not.
one thing, even longevity.
Not at
You know,
all.
but speaking of that, that's a great segue, Dr. Velma, because
Hmm.
you are celebrating 51 years of marriage this year.
Yes, yes.
Talk to us about what that's been like for you to be an example of not only longevity, but also what is possible when you do have your priorities right.
Well, a lot of what I talk about in the books concerning dating, I integrated some things that it's important as you move into marriage. I tried to integrate many of the things you need to know about and experience and understand when you move to that level. And so that was me sharing some of the things that my husband and I discovered about marriage and how to maintain a long marriage. And I'm going to give you an example. There was a moment in our marriage, I think it was around 15 years, we hit a rough patch. And so I talk a lot about those rough patches and how to move through them and understanding who your true enemy is in a marriage. Because the fact that you said you're going to take this person and you're going to stay with them and you're going to blend your two mentalities and upbringing and become one and operate as one. Because in my household, we operate as a we. There's no Velma I and there's no Bruce I. There's a we in our home. So it's what we decide, it's what we agree to, is what we. So we try to stick with that. So many people don't understand that. So I had to integrate some of those things in there. So when we hit that rough patch, and a lot of what I write about, I talk about what happens to a couple that hits a rough patch. And so I just wanted to make sure they were clear. 15 years in, I'm thinking we were doing okay. And then we hit a rough patch. We weren't sure how we were going to get out of it and whether or not we wanted to get out of it, whether or
Well,
not we were done. So I went to a senior aunt in my family, 80 years old, and her name was Aunt Marie. She's gone to be with the Lord. And I said, Aunt Marie, I don't know. This is really tough right now. She said, baby, anytime they call you that,
yeah,
that term of endearment, baby, what are you going to do with all the work you've put into this man? And my eyes went,
yeah,
now you have just said something. Aunt Marie, you have just said something. So who would say that? But someone who knows, someone who's been there, someone who's wise. And so, yet, we got this generation who wants to cut off wisdom. And God says a fool rejects wisdom. So, we got a lot of fools out there who are
yeah.
just doing whatever they want to do. So, they're not my audience. But those who really want to know, when my aunt spoke to me that day, I knew what I needed to go back and do. And I knew there were things I needed to take on and understand. The reminder that I give in the book, Your enemy is not each other. Your enemy is not flesh and blood. So you got to remember that in a marriage. And I say the one place that you're going to live out scripture is in your home, because you don't get to not answer the phone when a spouse calls, and you don't get to lock the door because they live in the same house as you. So you're going to live out scripture for sure. Forgiveness, letting things go, not holding on, recognizing who the real enemy is, because you're not enemies to each other. That enemy is not flesh and blood. So when we remember that, and that's how we overcame that period of time, we have to remember that we're not enemies to each other. Let's see, take a moment and let's see who really disrupted our household. And we find out it's not me or my husband, it's
Yeah,
that enemy that hates unity and agreement. That's who will fight you.
right. Such a powerful thing. I want to get caught up on comments here. Jamaican Girl 25, hello to you over there on Instagram. Good to be able to see you. Robert says, wow, congrats, Doc. Tony Bonita, hello to you on Facebook.
Hey,
Tony
Tony.
says, I remember my first boyfriend asking my daddy for permission to come
Mm-hmm.
see me.
Mm-hmm.
Tina Seaman says, 50 years at the testimony. Thank you. And Robert says, great advice. And I think that's the growth. And I appreciate your honesty and transparency here,
Of
Dr. Brown,
course.
because I think one of the mistakes that people make, which is why I talk about my growing up and my challenges, because I think
Mhm.
people sometimes put us on a certain place and they don't realize, hey, we go through life stuff
Yeah.
just like everyone else does.
Yes.
But it's about moving past it and moving forward instead of being defined by that, right?
Yes.
And I think that is the big thing. And that's what I love about going back to. I'm going to highlight it on the Amazon side about the books, The Wrong Catch and The Wrong Catch She'll Tear Down the House. Because
Hmm.
in those books, Veronica's able to take what she's learned
Yep.
and to pour into others. Grayson's
Yes.
able to continue to pour into others. Do you think that's almost a responsibility we have? Is that a responsibility you feel? Maybe I should ask it that way, to
The
take what you've learned, Dr. Velma, and to share that with others.
When I said earlier, when I retired, I was planning to put all my expertise and skill sets in the box, marked retired. And God said, no. He said, I've blessed you with the years of marriage that you've been given. People are going to want to know, how did you do it? What is it what's the key to maintaining and developing a long term relationship? And so God was the one that told me, I can't keep this to myself. He's blessed us with this ability. And so, therefore, others are going to want to know how we did it. And so that's the reason I want to be transparent. And there's a lot of transparency and tips in the books, in the series, through the characters and their stories on purpose, for that
Yeah.
reason, that people really need to know, how do you get here? And what we discovered is there's a lot you do before you even get married. There's a lot you prepare for before then. Like Tina said earlier, there was a day when the dynamics of your neighborhood, your church, people knew each other's families. You knew everybody in each family. So you knew the ones that you could consider, and you knew the ones mom said, dad said, don't you dare. And so there were certain families had reputations in the neighborhood you were not supposed to be anywhere near. There were
Yeah.
others that had a great reputation. So we knew that. Those kind of things are gone. And so that's why a wise counsel is what I recommend in the books, and that the character Grayson proposes to people. That doesn't mean you still can't use wisdom. So therefore you gather around you a wise counsel that will help you to vet the person you're considering, whether it's a male or a female, because women these days are just as bad as the men in terms of making great choices.
Now, y'all, Dr. Velma said that. Now, I didn't.
Cyrus didn't say it.
Look,
I own that.
look,
I've
I just
talked
want
to many of them.
to make sure everyone heard Dr. Velma said that. Cyrus did not say.
No, you did not. I did.
Melissa,
I
hello to
said it.
you.
Hi,
Melissa Baker
Melissa.
joining us on Facebook. For those of you who are just tuning in, welcome. You're watching Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon platform, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button either here in this corner or down below. You also will see some of the books by our guests. We're talking back with Dr. Velma Bagby. She's a best-selling author of the Catch series. You see the first book in the series here, The Catch No One Wants. I'm going to highlight it for you guys on the carousel. Dr. Velma, you alluded to it, but the newest book in the Catch series is here. I'm going to highlight it for our Amazon audience, the 30-Day Wild Journal. What is it that inspired Miss Queenie and you to be able to do the Wild Journal?
I think it's exciting. First of all, just working with Miss Queenie all this time. We've worked together for a few years now,
Mhm.
and being able to give her the opportunity to become a first-time author really blessed me. She's worked with me. She's done some projects with me, and she definitely. We had worked for months creating our own affirmations, and till God said, "No, get 30 women and have 30 different perspectives. Let the women tell you what their favorite scripture is and why that's important." And so that's what we did. So the fact that she helped me on this project to me was the best reward was to make sure she was on the cover and become an author as well because she truly helped me to get this done.
Love it. I introduced you as a best-selling author, Dr. Velma, and you don't do it for these things, but it has to feel good to know that not only are you, I mean, I know, like for myself, I mean, writing is something I wanted to do since middle school. I was writing in notebooks and sharing it with my classmates, and they were talking, and I was telling them when I was going to be an author. And I remember when I first started to date myself, back when chapbooks were popular, I used to go to Kinko's and staple books together. I was selling those things for $10. you know, and now of course we have the privilege of being on Amazon. Do you have time to really think about that? Do you have almost a dozen books that you've written on Amazon.com?
Cyrus, what do I think about? I just know that I have a list and God has a list. And
Mm,
sometimes what I have on my list, his list supersedes mine. And so just recently, some brand new opportunities came to be, and I had to add them to the list. I know that I wasn't sure how I was going to conclude this series, and something got added to the list. So there's a couple of projects that I'm working on for this list.
mhm,
I participated in an anthology recently, and that anthology is coming out soon. But I will be releasing my story because I talk about my mother and my mom in the waiting room. That's what it's called. And what she experienced as a single parent, raising 7 kids, and what she was able to achieve despite that. So all of that was not on my personal list,
mhm,
but God inspires me, and that's where the idea came from. Why not write about what my mother did and the strength and resilience and faith I saw in her and the growth in what she did when she chose to not accept what the world said she should be or do as a single parent and decided to rise above it. So there's so many other projects. The goal of the anthology is I want to make sure people could see what it looks like if you apply the right principles and how the what are the outcomes if you do. And I want to show you some success stories, and that's what I'm hoping to present in one of the books that's coming out soon. So
mhm.
I'm looking forward to all of this. But I also wanted to mention something I think Tina said earlier about the going online and the dating. I remember having my conversation, which is what prompted my very first book before the series, Your Adam is Asleep Until God Opens His Eyes. That was based on my conversations with my adult daughters. That was during the time when the swiping left and swiping right really came became popular, and they were popular using them. So I like to present the fact that it doesn't matter what venue or what method you use, it still requires that you ask the right questions. Too many people are dating strangers and marrying strangers, and then you're shocked after you get in the house with them and discover something about them you never saw. And that's because you're not asking the right questions. So, Cyrus, if you and I decided to go into a business arrangement, the very first thing you and I would both do, and that is to go back and look and do the research based on what you said your business can do, or the benefits your business will bring to me,
Yeah.
or benefits my business will bring to you. So we would conduct that research. We look at each other's financials. We
Mhm,
look at each other's history, our businesses and how where they're doing now, whether or not we hit some rough patches and how we overcame them. And yet we want to marry someone based on what we see, and we never do any due diligence regarding this kind of history. You're going into a long-term relationship with someone, don't you want to know these things? So
yeah.
during that time, I gave my daughters the specific questions. I said, if you ask the right questions, you can stop wasting your time with people who are not interested in moving in the direction you hope to go. So
Mhm.
my daughters began asking these questions. Well, what's your intention in dating me? That was the first question. And they couldn't believe some. some of the things they were getting in response. Well, I'm just here to have fun, or they would hee haw around that question, couldn't answer it. So that tells you that's not someone you're interested in.
Right.
And so that helped them to just get through, just the range of folks that were on there. And they were excited about the fact that they weren't wasting time with anyone who are really not moving in the direction. If they're not there to date for marriage or look for their spouse or a mate, then they're wasting your time. If they're there just to have fun, they'll tell you that in their very first question. So, my whole premise in all of this, if we take the approach that God has already given us, if you really ask the right questions, if you do the deep dive, like you should, because this is not social dating, which is what I call high school dating. It's really
Mhm.
getting to know who this person is. Like the example I gave with Cyrus and I, if we were going into a business contract, we would
Right.
do our due diligence and examine who this person in this business really is. So I
Right.
think that's what's important.
Such a great thing. Miss Queenie, hello to you. We were talking about you earlier. Good to be able to see you over there on
Hey, Miss
Facebook.
Queenie.
A great conversation with you, Dr. Bauman. I'm so excited about all the great things that are happening. So, again, just to recap for our audience, right now, Dr. Velma is in season 1 of her show, Finding Your Voice. We had a conversation recently. She's also going to be gearing up for season 2 of Dr. Velma Talks. I always want to change the name. It is Dr. Velma Talks, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I go between Dr. Velma Talks and Dr. Velma Speaks. I don't know where I get, but Dr. Velma Talks season 2 is coming up later on this year, and also, of course, the newest book in the Catch series is this, the 30-Day Wow Journal. It's available right now on Amazon. You guys can be able to get. So a lot for our audience to stay connected with Dr. Velma. How can they stay connected with you?
I'm on all the social media platforms. It's Dr. Velma Bagby, but I do encourage you to subscribe to my website, drvelmabagby.com, so you can stay current with changes and things that are upcoming, as well as my YouTube channel. Please make sure you subscribe there. All of my episodes are going to occur there, and you can always set a reminder of the upcoming shows as well on YouTube. So, looking forward to hearing from you.
Love that. And she also has some exclusive things there on her website as well. So make sure you guys check that out. Dr. Bama, always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thanks again for a great conversation.
Thanks, Cyrus. It's always a pleasure.
And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you'll make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.